Hello everybody and welcome back to my Day 5 recap for the Summit 5. After yesterday, there are only 3 teams left, and today we'll find out who will go home the champion. In the lower bracket final, we have OG versus Team Liquid. These two teams has been the most consistent team in Dota for a while now. I suppose these teams will most likely be the team everyone will be looking out for at TI6. Since they always seem to meet towards the final rounds in every tournament, this is starting to become a rivalry of the year. And every time they play each other, we always get some amazing games, and today was no exception. For the first game, OG surprise picked an OD to go with the draw lineup. This is a hero we have not seen since he got nerfed to the ground a few patches ago. But thanks to a few small buffs in the last patch, he might be viable now, and having the draw aura definitely helps a lot with his weakened laning stage. Miracle once again showed how dominant he can be with this hero. The damage output from an OD even at such early stage is insane. And OG executed a draw lineup perfectly. They were able to get an early Aegis and push the enemy high ground at around 12 minutes. This is perhaps a scenario we have seen way too many times this tournament, and we all know how this usually ends. Shortly after this teamfight, Liquid had no choice but to call GG as OG took a quick 1-0 lead. And I think this will be the last time either of these two teams let drop get past the first phase ban. Unlike the first game, the second game was quite even early on. Just as the game looked like it was going towards a stalemate, since that's how a Naga game tends to become, Liquid found a very important pickoff on the Juggernaut with Chrono Spear, which allowed them to start sieging the OG high ground. Despite the Anti-Mage and the Naga having similar farm as they both had 19k net worth at this point, AM was already reaching his power spike in this game, since he finished majority of his core items already. But the Naga still had a few items to go because she could be the annoying late game Naga we all hate her for. Which is why the Juggernaut was crucial for OG to have any chance of defending high ground. But with Juggernaut not being able to buy back, Team Liquid was suddenly in a great position to take this game. After wiping OG and forcing the Naga buyback, OG shortly GG out of game 2 as most of their base was gone, so we had to decide in game 3. In the final game, it was once again very even for majority of the game actually, and it really looked like it could have been anyone's game. These two teams were constantly trading with each other, and they had over 70 kills in 50 minutes of gameplay. However, the game deciding moment came when OG was able to get a 3-man wipe on Team Liquid, which forced them to use some very important buybacks. This game was definitely worth watching, and as with all the other great games from this tournament, I have made a full highlight video and I will link it below so you can check it out. So back to the game. A few minutes later, at almost the same spot, OG was once again able to get a few pickoffs onto Liquid, as Liquid winning 1-1 to save each other, resulting in them getting almost a full team wipe, with absolutely no buybacks available. And just like how Team Liquid suddenly ended game 2, OG did the same in game 3, as they pushed past their arch rival and will meet Wings once again in the grand finals. Liquid had another great showing in the tournament, but once again they fell to OG. This marks the third land straight where they got knocked out by OG. So it really does seem like OG have the numbers, despite Team Liquid coming so close every single time. But their dominant wins against other teams is still something that's worth mentioning, like yesterday where they demolished Navi with 2 quick 20 minutes games. So there's no doubt in my mind that Team Liquid will still head into TI6 as one of the favorites to take the whole thing. However, it will be interesting to see if Kuroki can come up with some secret strategy to deal with OG, since they definitely seem to be their kryptonite lately. For the grand final, we have a rematch of an upper bracket final, and OG came out of game 1 like they meant business. Wings allowed OG to first pick the Drow Ranger, which I'm sure is a mistake they won't ever make again. So just like the game we saw earlier, versus Team Liquid, OG started off the game very well early, and they were already pressuring the high ground with an early Aegis at 17 minutes. And there wasn't much Wings could do to stop them, because their entire early team fight consists of Warlock Ultimate and Upheaval. But once that's used, OG just got out of it and just turned around and killed everything. And just like that, Wings had no choice but to call GG at 18 minutes, giving OG an early lead to the grand final. For the second game, once again the early game looked like it was in favor of OG, although only slightly this time, but that is to be expected since OG picked Undying just to try lane against Huskar to jump down. Even though they were successful in doing so, Huskar was still able to get an armlet at around 10 minutes, and Wings was able to find a surge momentum against OG in a long drawn out fight near the Roshan pit. This was crucial for Wings, since before the fight, Huskar was beginning to fall behind, and he really is one of those heroes that has to try and stay ahead to 1v5, otherwise his usefulness decreased significantly. After getting some much needed gold from kills, and also killing enemy carries, Invoker and Huskar surged ahead on the net worth chart, which allowed them to attempt Roshan at 18 minutes. This is when everything began to fall apart for OG, as they tried to contest when they had no business to, allowing Huskar to snowball out of control. And with no real way of dealing with a snowballing Huskar early, since there's so much control and safe on Wings' side, and OG's carries had nowhere near enough farm, Wings was able to take game 2 at 25 minutes. In game 3, OG played well early, however the last pick anti-mage from Wings was very scary for them, since if he get farmed, he would basically counter all the carries on OG's side. So even though the game was even for the first 20 minutes, the most important thing I think that occurred during this period was that the anti-mage got uncontested farm. And he even went battle fairy before treads, which means his farm was accelerated even faster. So this fight at 25 minutes felt like a must win for OG, as they had to get some objective out of it, whether it was a building or maybe a kill on the anti-mage to delay his progression. However, that was not the case, as Wings won the fight, and from here on, it was an uphill battle for OG because the anti-mage was starting to become too big for them to deal with. And at 29 minutes, this was the beginning of the end for OG. Even though Miracle was godlike at this point, he could not do anything about the anti-mage, and he actually even fed the godlike bounty to the AM, which gave him even more farm. And when OG sees a 20k net worth anti-mage at 30 minutes, all they can do is run. But how can you run from an anti-mage with an Abyssal Blade? Well, it turns out you can't. Wings took game 3 at 32 minutes as they clinched the first match point for the grand finals. For game 4, OG picked a lineup that looked like something they would have drafted at the Frankfurt Major, and Wings picked a Spirit Breaker offlane, which nobody expected. And after the draft, I think all the casters thought it was definitely going to game 5, because OG's lineup just seemed much better. However, Wings somehow just won fights after fights by outplaying OG. First, with an Aegis steal here by 8PTN on a Spirit Breaker, not to mention he even got a last hit on the Roshan, followed by a good Chrono Spear by a Shadow on the Void on OG's Huskar. With Huskar gone, that's all of OG's DPS at this point, and everyone else just fell 1 by 1. And honestly, it just seemed like Wings was able to run at OG and just play better than them, with what perceived as a weaker draft, which I guess is a rare sight these days, since usually all we see is OG outplaying other teams. And I know yesterday I said the best teams in the world currently are Newbie, OG, and Team Liquid, with Wings slightly behind them, but after today's showing, I guess I'll have to change my mind. Personally, I don't have them as a favorite for TI6, but I think they'll be an interesting team to look out for and cheer for, and I would not be surprised if they go far or even win TI6. And I feel like for a team like Wings, their biggest enemy at TI6 is honestly themselves, since all of their players are young and inexperienced on the big stage. But today, they have once again proven that their ESL Manila win was not a fluke, and they really just choke hard under pressure at the Manila Major. And I hope it doesn't happen to them again in Seattle, since they're such an entertaining team to watch. And back to this game, Wings was able to take game 4 at 34 minutes, and as well as taking the whole series 3-1 against OG. And interestingly enough, this tournament is the first time OG has played against Wings, and the record so far against them is 1-5. Regardless how they did against Wings, OG still had a really strong showing throughout this whole tournament. And losing to a team that's as unpredictable and unexpected like Wings is nothing to be ashamed of. And I think in many people's eyes, OG might still be one of their favorites to win TI6, since you can't discredit 2 major wins with just 1 line result. And with that, this concludes my last day recap for the Summit 5. And the next tournament before TI6 will be Star Ladder, which will happen on 21st. And I'll be making recap videos for that, and hopefully you can tune in and check it out if you're too busy to watch the tournament. And thank you for watching, and as usual, don't forget to like my video and subscribe to my channel if you enjoy my content. And I'll see you next time.